Okay, we'll call this closed session meeting to order for March 10th, 2025. Current time is 1 minute after 4. City Clerk, would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Here.
Councilmember Woolsey,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Venable,
Here.
Mayor Thorpe.
Here.
Absent from this meeting is Councilmember Bieber.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
We do have one public comment card. Ms. Donna Snodgrass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Snodgrass. There was a posting put on the Yucaipa political page this morning or afternoon, and I want to read it into record, and then I have some comments on it. It starts with, "This is interesting. I just had a conversation with a city employee. Yes, they're talking. Here's a summary of what was shared. Employees are looking for jobs outside of this city. They've had enough, but it's not about Chris Mann, it's the city council. They don't feel they're being supported by this new council. Chris Mann is the public fall guy, but not the problem. They thought it would be much better after the management changed, but now that has changed again. Chris had made changes that supported those who were doing a good job and holding people accountable for the jobs they were hired to do. The inside scuttlebutt is this. John Thorpe and Bob Miller removed Chris Mann so they could shuffle things around. Fermine will be appointed as interim city manager. Jennifer will step back to her deputy city manager position. But wait, there's more. An RFP will be put together, but for eyewash, to make it look good. The current city manager from the city of Redlands is already having conversations with someone on the city council. He will become the new city manager. Fermine will be appointed to deputy, and Jennifer will be demoted to something. I can't say if all this is true, but it is very interesting. We'll see if any of it pans out. Now, this is me personally. I believe most of this is supposition with a sprinkling of maybe a smattering of a little bit of truth to it. But I believe it just needed to be read into record here so that you all are aware of what the public sentiment is turning to. I need to ask you, can't answer, did you even give Chris a chance to respond to anything that was said or what happened? Now, I've been told that Chris Mann removed his personal belongings from City Hall this weekend, and this can only mean he has tendered his resignation. I pray you don't accept it, but then who would want to work under the current atmosphere? Now, I want you to know that I believe that Jennifer and Fermine are both very fine people, and if that is the plan, that's up to you. But both of these two here have done a fine job for the city of Yucaipa, and whichever way you decide to go, they would be good in the leadership positions. But the public sentiment is turning around with the way things had happened. And there's another post by someone on Save Yucaipa today that they're going to be here in force to see if there's anybody in the parking lot ready to come in to fill the seat tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have no more comments, sir.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So we'll move into closed session. Current time is 3 minutes after 4. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to call our regular scheduled city council meeting, successor agency and housing authority meeting to order for March 10th, 2025. Time that we are starting is 6:02. We are going to move into our invocation. And actually, I should do roll first, right? Ma'am? Okay. Invocation will be done by Pastor Paul Hobbs. Following that, we will have the pledge by the captain. If you all would please stand for both.
Father, we thank you for this great city and those that lead. And Father, we pray that you would bless all of us with humility to call upon you and trust you this evening. And Father, as we do, we pray for wisdom and discernment and direction, for decisions that must be made and choices that are made on behalf of others that affect many lives. And Father, we thank you. We thank you for people that care about you, people that care about their city enough to serve. And so, Father, we pray that you would do your work through them today. We pray for strength as well. We ask it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag, put your hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Captain. All right, moving on to roll call. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Beaver,
Here.
Councilmember Miller,
Here.
Councilmember Woolsey. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Venable,
Here.
Mayor Thorpe.
Here.
All present.
Mr. City Attorney, report from closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any reportable action out of closed session today, although the City Council did not conclude its deliberations, so we will be reconvening back into closed session after open session is over.
Thank you. Acting City Manager, any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. That brings us to Yaps. Is Yaps present? Come on up.
Thank you. So this is, my name is Jennifer Hurlbut, and I'm the Executive Director of YAPS, Yucaipa Animal Placement Society, our only no-kill shelter in the area. And this is our pet of the month. This is Mini Cooper. He is 1 year old, and he's 5.5 pounds. And he is definitely adoptable and adorable. He is a little yapper, but that's okay because we want to know when somebody comes to our front door or comes in the house or has food. So this is Mini Cooper. We've got a couple announcements I'd like to share with you guys. The first is this Saturday, we're having a community yard sale. So the community can donate items to us that they are spring cleaning and would like to get rid of. And YAPS will happily sell those at our yard sale, and all the proceeds go to our little guys. That's this Saturday from 8 to 2. Second, we have a public pet CPR and first aid class. That is going to be taught by Enlightened Dogs here in Yucaipa, Sunday, April 27th. It's $75 per person, and half of that registration goes back to YAPS for our animals. And then finally, we're partnering with Love Yucaipa for Make a Difference Day. That's Saturday, May 3rd. And we have jobs that people can do, from little kids to anybody from any ability. That's painting, helping to organize our sheds, and just really making over our shelter. We've got about 30 people already signed up, but we've got over 50 opportunities to help. So if you've got some painters at home and you'd like to come and help organize or fix things up for us at the shelter, we'd love to have you. That's Saturday, May 3rd, and that's on Love Yucaipa on that website. And finally, a couple things that we've got in the works. One is a Petco Love Grant so that we can provide free vaccines to the community. We hope to get that this summer, and our new spay neuters grant available this summer from City of Yucaipa. So check for that in July, August this year. And that's it.
Thank you very much, and why don't you come up here in front in the dais, and we'll take a picture with the pup.
Yes, you can hold all 5 pounds of it. Yes, yes, you can. Otherwise, I'm taking it home.
Although my dog might get upset.
Is he giving you kisses? Oh.
My wife's watching, so.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
We do. We will start with Judy Fink, followed by Mark Gallo.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Judy Fink. I live on 4th Street in Yucaipa in District 3. My message here. I've lived here since January, in Yucaipa since January 2016. At the same place, so I'm in District 3, and never have I attended nor been invited to a District 3 meeting with my council person. So my question is for my newly elected Representative Councilwoman Judy Woolsey. Have you planned a first meeting yet for District 3 with your constituents? Because I haven't seen anything posted and haven't heard anything. And when will they be and where will they be held? That's my question, and I don't know if you can answer that or not, but that's what I'm interested in knowing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. At the conclusion of our meeting, if you wanted to respond, you can. If not, then we can talk about it more.
Mark Gallo.
Hello, everyone. My name's Mark Gallo. I'm a president of a new football and cheer program that we started here in Yucaipa. It's called UCal Football and Cheer. We take kids from Yucaipa and Calamasa. We're just trying to give the kids a different avenue for football and cheer here in the city. Just wanted to introduce us. Right now we're doing like a little passing league, 7 versus 7, they call it. We're practicing down at the high school on the soccer field Tuesdays and Thursdays. The 23rd, we have a little tournament with different cities coming to play at the high school stadium. And we're just trying to be recognized by the city as a legitimate league. Right now we have about 50 kids out there having fun, so you guys are more than welcome to come see what we're doing. We're trying to just have different options for the kids. We've talked to high school staff, coaches. They're bringing down some of their varsity players to come do scrimmage stuff with the boys and little drills. So it's just something new and exciting. And I just wanted to introduce our new program. And that's it. Thank you.
What, sir? What time on the 23rd?
It'll be 8 a.m. to 3 at the stadium.
Thank you.
The other cards I have are for items 3 and 5, so we'll listen to those comments when we get to those items.
All right, perfect, thank you. That brings us to city council conflict of interest disclosure. If there's any council members that need to disclose any conflict of interest, this is the time to do so. Seeing none, hearing none. Okay, moves us to the consent agenda. Acting city manager, is there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
No, okay. And do I have a motion from anybody? Or any items you want to pull?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
We have a first and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That moves us to item number 3, presented by Mr. Fermin Preciado.
Hi, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is regarding an emergency electrical service backup generator for City Hall. As you recall, back in the first or second week of January, the City of Yucaipa experienced electrical power outages that were associated with Edison's public safety power shutoff program, and that was due to the high winds that were forecasted within the city and also in our surrounding areas. City Hall was affected by the power outages, as was a good part of Yucaipa, and City Hall was without power for a few days. Then at the January 27th City Council meeting, the City Council adopted 5 City Council goals for the calendar year 2025. One of those goals was to enhance emergency preparedness and also emergency management capabilities. And as a result of the power outages at that meeting, City Council directed staff to return to council with a recommendation regarding the possible installation of an electrical service generator to City Hall to be able to continue to provide services to the public during these power outages. At the time, staff did look at several options, including purchasing a mobile or a portable generator that could be transported in the trailer and then brought to City Hall in the event of a power outage or when we received a notification of a power outage. And we also looked at connecting City Hall to the existing generator at the police station next door. On February 24th, the City Council asked staff to return to council with more information for the option to connect City Hall to the police station facility generator. And so what we learned over the last 2 weeks is that the existing generator at the police station facility is a 188 kVA unit. And we also learned that only a portion of the City Hall is wired to be able to operate under that backup generator in the event of an outage. Not the entire building, but only a portion of that building. And in the event of a power outage, the portion of that building that would be using that power would be using 150 kVA of the 188 that were available, that would be produced by that generator. So that would only leave about 38 to 40 kVA to be used for something else. We also looked at City Hall, identified some critical areas of City Hall and what it would take to power those areas, as well as the HVAC system for City Hall, and we learned that we would require a generator that produced 160 kVA for City Hall. So what that means is that in total, a generator that could potentially power a portion of the police station facility and also City Hall, a generator of that size, of a larger size would be required, so a 375 kVA generator would be needed. And not to mention some of the other modifications that we would have to make to City Hall to be able to separate the critical areas from the rest of City Hall. So there is a table on page 31 of the agenda packet that includes the cost for the modular or the mobile unit. that you've seen before, and also the cost to upgrade the police station generator to a larger unit and some of the other associated costs with that option. Also included on that table is the lead time for both options. The mobile portable diesel generator would require about 3 to 4 months from order to delivery, and the connection to the Yucaipa Police Department facility generator would take a little longer, probably closer to 12 months, maybe 18 months, depending on the work that would be required. So based on that information and the comparison in that table, staff is recommending that City Council approve the expenditure budget adjustment in the general fund of $300,000 for the purchase of the mobile portable generator for the City Hall facility. And I just want to note that the estimate that you see on the table, $285,000, is information that we received from several different vendors. Obviously, we rounded up to $300,000 just if City Council does choose to go in that direction, that we have all our bases covered there. So I just wanted to point that out for clarity. So that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you, sir. I know some of us are going to have questions for you. One I've got real quick, and it's probably in there because it's a very thorough agenda this time. And maybe the term's there and I just didn't catch it. If we bring a generator in to use for the facility here, is that, in that estimate of cost, does that include like a disconnect switch, so we're not backfilling the grid, so to speak, and it just keeps it internal? So if they're making repairs on the line, we're not, hurting a technician or a lineman or something?
Yes, the City Hall facility already has a transfer switch,
Okay.
but this price includes the modification to that switch that would be required for that.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Miller?
Yeah, we had obviously put this in our goals originally. I know this got back to us. Thank you, Fermine and Jennifer, for bringing it back to us. So just a couple of points I wanted to mention. I didn't get to comment on last time it came back because I wasn't in the room. It's important, if you remember when we had the blackouts, we had many calls and many folks coming to City Hall. And sometimes when these emergencies happen, as time goes on, we forget about what happened during that time. We get a little fickle, so let's bring it back to remembering that time. And there was demand for service here. The police department, fire department, they're able to operate with their generator, clearly. But we have to ensure business continuity here at the city. We have to make sure we can still run operations because business has to go on. So during power outages, which we know now will happen, Edison has told us that. We're very clear about that. We did put it into our strategic plan to enhance our emergency preparedness. And it does, not only does it align with our goals, it's good business to be prepared ahead of time rather than try to deal with it later. It's called lessons learned. In emergency management, that's the key to everything. Everything that happens, you want to do lessons learned. Like we talked about the signal markings that we got grant money to do, so we can have reflective signals now, because that was an issue during the last blackout. So we know that's going to happen. The other thing about having the portable mobile generator was it does give us some flexibility. We can deploy the generator in different locations if needed for different issues that may come up throughout the city. It's suitable for temporary or immediate needs. And it's a little bit easier maintenance and storage compared to stationary hardwired units. So I think it's something that we've not put in our goals. We have the funds to do it. It's a great investment to be able to continue operations when things go dark and we're able to do what we need to do in the community to provide the service that they're going to expect from us when things happen. So we can provide answers and continue to work with our public safety partners that we're operational too. I just wanted to say that. I didn't get a chance last time.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Woolsey?
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of questions. Under the table here that you provided, it does comment on fees, permits, and commissioning, $22,000. Why would we need fees or permits for a portable?
Those are, for a portable unit, we would need to obtain a permit from AQMD because it is a diesel generator, so the fees would cover those application fees.
So it would be because it's a diesel?
Yes.
Okay. And then contingency. What all would that include? What type of things?
Typically, it's shown as a line item on the table for any unforeseen circumstances or parts or equipment that you may need. Again, we would have to go through, if approved, we would have to go through the RFP process and work with a vendor that would help us get what we need, and it's a line item in there to cover any extras that maybe at this level we're not taking into consideration when we put together the estimate.
Like cables or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, to run, okay. I did ask Mr. White for a breakdown on possibly what rental has cost us in the last year for different events. Thank you for that information. And it came back about $41,000. $20,000 of that was for the Five Winds concert. Now, and I'm assuming it took more than one generator for that, because it was a pretty big event.
Just the one.
Just the one, okay, great. Okay, but I have heard in the past conversation that it's very possible that the Five Winds may not take place this year because it's not been a really productive event, that we've lost money on that event. So in that event, if the Five Winds did not take place, then there's $20,000 right there that we wouldn't be spending. So now to address my council members here. I know that we've talked about this being, and originally I was under the same thinking, that it could be part of our emergency preparedness program. I've been rethinking about this, though, because maybe a better action would be to look at it more as a long-term plan and look into other options. Perhaps maybe even like a solar of some type that could fit into our long-term plan. Now, when I ran for this seat, I made a commitment to my district that I would be fiscally responsible with the city's funds. We've just paid out $30,000 for a lawsuit settlement. We have negotiations coming up with the staff. We know that public safety is going to cost us more. We've already been told that. We've not seen any budget yet, of course, because we're still in the process of working on that. We have Measure S that doesn't even start until April 1st. We see no money until July. And we know that the majority of that is going to go for public safety. So my opinion at this time is that I believe really, as far as the festivals go, that it would be better to go ahead and continue to rent the generators. Look at this more as a long-term goal. The electricity can go off anytime. There's no way you can judge that. And I know it would be very nice to have that. We all went through that. But at this point, I just think that this is something that I can't support.
Any questions or comments from your side? I think we still have to see if we have public comment as well, but yeah.
The last time we met, we discussed this matter. I asked a bunch of questions relative to operating our city hall in the event of emergency, but then in the last week, it dawned on me, this isn't our emergency operations center. Isn't the community center where we always host our emergency operations?
No, the community center is a designated shelter, but the city hall has always been the EOC.
If I'm not mistaken, last time the city manager and the chief of police signed an emergency declaration, it was at the community center, and it wasn't here, is that right? There's a
I'm
photograph.
just saying if the city of Yucaipa had a full-scale emergency.
EOC, this is the EOC?
This is our EOC.
Okay.
That was based more on their JIC or, pulling multiple agencies
Sure.
into one location. But if we're to have a full scale where the city of Yucaipa has to fully activate itself, the city hall in our emergency operations plan is the EOC.
Okay. And so the reason I brought that up is because I started thinking, and I could be wrong, but I wanted to see clarification on that matter. Do the solar panels that cover the parking, where does that power go?
If you're referring to the ones at the community park, those are connected to the system there at the community center and the park, so it goes to supplement that power there.
Does it light the
For
community
lights,
center?
Yes.
Okay, so the power at the community center would be on?
Yeah, it's a portion of the outside, the exterior lights of the community center and also the field lighting up above.
Okay. Okay.
Several years ago, when we put the transfer switch on here at City Hall, we did the same at the community center. So I would think that both facilities would need a transfer switch adaptation based on what Fermin commented this evening.
Okay. I think look, the government has to be operational during an emergency. I think that is accurate. To Councilmember Woolsey's point, there are businesses that do business as renting generators in the event of emergency, and I think maybe there might be a benefit, and this was brought to me by one of our citizens here in town. Is there a way we can maybe look into one of these companies and see if we can have an agreement, an emergency agreement, that during an emergency, the city of Yucaipa has first right of refusal on a generator capable of powering our EOC or our community center, or whatever the case may be, as a generator. The other thing I wanted to ask is, and this may go to Chief Malinowski, does CAL FIRE have portable generators that we could tap into should we need it if we have an isolated emergency here? No? And we should get that. CAL FIRE should do that and just give it to us.
When we put in the transfer switch years ago, I was negotiating such agreement, response agreement. It was an entity out of the Riverside area. And it went back and forth, to tell you the truth, between the city, our legal team at the time, and that entity, because when we're talking full-scale emergencies at the time, we never had the PSPS.
Sure.
Never. I think this is the first time I ever recall in the 26 years we had power for the full day, no power. We used to go like maybe an hour or two at max. The problem is when we have a catastrophic emergency, earthquake, San Andreas fault, whatever
Sure.
you want to call it. The biggest problem is getting that generator that came on a semi-truck, and it took 4 large individuals that could carry the cables, in addition with a certified electrician on site at the time, to even plug the system into the building to let it roll. The concern is if they can try to give us a guarantee that they can get us the generator here, but if the freeways are clogged or there's a fault in the freeway and they can't get passage, we have no continuity of government. It is something that the city recognized years ago, which is why we put in the transfer switch, but it just, like Councilmember Miller brought up, it kind of goes to the back, and we haven't had the forefront. Being without power for a few days was alarming to all city employees, because not everyone works off a laptop.
Sure.
And we're all borrowing generators to keep our laptops alive, including phones. But we have a large percentage of our employees that don't work off laptops, and all of their systems are in the cloud.
Yeah.
We did not have access. So we are not talking about something as using this for for events in the city. We are talking about ensuring that the city of Yucaipa can appropriately respond to the public in case of a full-scale emergency.
So, how long, and I'm not going to hold you to the exact timeline, but if we were to estimate how long it would take to invest in some kind of a solar project here at City Hall like we did at the community center, what would that time frame look like? What can we recall anybody what that solar project that was over the parking over there, how long that took, and what we can expect as a cost? I think Councilmember Woolsey made a good point. Is there a way we can have a long-term option that is not dependent on a generator, but green is the
We can look at that option, but I can't speak for Fermin because he and his team did the investigation behind this item. But I could pretty guarantee that we don't have enough roof capacity on City Hall to amp up this building. It's
375 kVA.
375. It's a large system. I don't know if solar can, we could go back and look. Obviously, I don't want to not pay attention to your direction.
And if I may, we have worked with a few energy companies. One of them who's actually has our information now that we gave them all of our SCE energy usage information. They're looking into that option. I know in the past we've looked into that a few times since 2016, and depending on the program, some programs, a lot of them are, if you enter into an agreement for many years and that they can help pay for some of the infrastructure, we haven't found the one that will fit us because of the limited footprint that we have, unless we want to put it where our park is, where Tucker Park is in front. So, but that's something we can come back to you with, as I mentioned, once we get a little further along with this company who's not only looking at City Hall, but all of our public facilities for alternative energy approaches.
I just sit here and think that while I think this is necessary, and I want to make sure that your team, city staff's team, and our emergency first responders have what they need. I think if I can vision this out in a perfect world, we maybe approve this, and then in a year, 2, 3 years, we come up with another more alternate energy, and you come back and say, hey, we're going to surplus property, that generator, we're going to sell it, and we're going to recoup some funds, and we only get $200,000 or $250,000 or less than what we bought it for. We're no longer dependent on it, and now the cost when we offset it costs us $50,000 because we netted back selling it, and we can rely on something other than the generator. In the interim, I don't want to rob our city of being prepared for horrible things, because that's critically important as well.
If we move down in the future, like you said, like say 3 to 5 years out, and we don't need that portable generator anymore, then that generator could be repositioned at the community center for the shelter need. Because right now, the community center could go off grid too. Sure. And that's one of our that's the first facility we tend to go to that can service the community. So it could easily then amp up the community center as a human and animal shelter if needed. And that's been used before for that.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, and then after you, I think Councilman Miller's got one other point. So go ahead.
You wanna
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, when the power wall went out stuff and I went to Tractor Supply, all the toilet paper was gone. I'm kidding. That was just a joke. Just seems like every time that we have a disaster, the toilet paper's gone. It's crazy. But there was no generators to be found and stuff. And I had people calling me left and right asking me if they can use mine, not mine personal, but at work. But, and solar, there's a time and place for solar. I was talking to a friend of mine who works at Stater Brothers, and he says that they got rid of their generator and put in solar and battery packs, and they had to close so many stores because it was for so long they can only power just their food. So if we have a disaster or anything to that effect and stuff, we have no sun to power anything like that and stuff. Where do we go from there? You know? While you guys were talking and stuff, I pulled it up because I'm an equipment guy, okay? So I have a guy out here that I worked with a long time over at Caterpillar, and I see a lot of things and stuff, and I don't get why we can't buy a low-hour machine as far as the city goes, but I understand. I've talked to other cities that buy only new stuff. They can't buy a low-hour machine, which is half the price. But in that effect, I found a multi-quip 185 kV for $59,000. So I think that if we really squeeze it, I sent that to you just a minute ago on your email, just so you know. I think that if we looked and squeezed, and I think we can get this done for $150,000 myself. Right now, I just found this for $60,000. Tax and everything like that, you're probably looking at close to 72, something like that. So I believe that we should get it. I don't believe that we should spend $300,000 on it or close to it. I think that if we really tightened up to how we really want to, I think we get something, you know, for $60,000, brand new. Did you get it on your email?
Yes, it's as you mentioned, a 188. The one that is included in the agenda report is actually a 330, so it's a little bigger than that, but I see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're required for, what did you say that we needed to run this? 180, or no, 140 something, right?
For a portion of City Hall is 160, but that would require the modification, so we want to power the entire City Hall, it would be the 300, the 330.
Okay, so I wonder if we can put that in. 330, here's one right here for 81,000 bucks. So, is that about right? So, you know, there's options that we can do. I mean, there's some that are 155, one generic one for 21,000. I don't know if I'd trust that one, but anyways, that's what I'm just saying. I mean, like I said, I'm an equipment guy, and this is right down my wheelhouse. And so, if we could buy a low-houred generator, I don't know if we could or not, but there's other deals out there as well. And I think that we'd still get a fairly decent warranty on them and cover everything that we needed. So, if it was me, I'd approve, you know, let's split it in half, not 300, let's go 150 and see if we can get it done. And if you need my help, my phone's always on.
If approved, we can certainly look into that. I know that one of the requirements is that it has to be a Tier 4 CARB compliant one.
Yeah, most all your new ones and stuff like that they sell. California can't buy anything less than Tier 4 now. I can't go and buy a Tier 3 machine and, you know, and try to put it in my fleet at any time and stuff. And that's what I deal with all the time with CARB and the DOORS program that I have to go through. So in the state of California, nothing can be sold as Tier 3. It has to be Tier 4. So that's my spiel. So.
All right, thank you. Councilman Miller, you had something else?
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank my council member for the great input and good enlightenment. But a couple things, Jennifer, I think when we, as we talked, designed this building, it was the EOC. It is the Emergency Operations Center when you have a major focusing event. This is it. In fact, our city manager will be our emergency operation head. They will run it. We will have public safety, we'll be in operations, we'll have finance, so we'll handle different sections. We will have different sections here. But this is where it's at. It has to be operational. And we got to remember the big word in emergency management is mitigation. And mitigation is mitigating things in the future, which means we know we have focusing events. We have fires, we have floods, and the possibility of earthquakes. Business continuity is key to running the organization so we can respond for our community effectively. No doubt about it. I'm going to trust the staff that they've vetted this, that they've worked very hard. I appreciate the input from the experts that probably know a lot more about technical equipment than I do, but I know emergency management. And emergency management is all about mitigation from historical perspective, that you know what's coming. We know we're going to have blackouts now. We know we're going to have citizens that are going to be calling us like they did before. And hopefully, whatever issue comes up, we have mitigated the issues enough that we can respond effectively and reduce risk. That's all this is. The investment we're making is to reduce risk and to be responsible to response to our community so we can get back to doing business as normal as possible. That's what we're investing in. Yes, there's other ways I'm sure we could talk about doing this, but I think you as a staff are bringing this back twice now. Am I right, Jennifer? You need a decision from us. I don't want to see us kick it down the road one more time. I think does the public, was there comment on this, John? And I'll stop with this. Remember, it's about mitigation and making sure that we're ahead of it rather than try to be reactive in the end. And that is emergency management. I'm not going to call on my experts here on my left side because I would not put them on I wouldn't put them on No, I'm not going to call on you, I promise. But that is the key to this whole thing, and we have to understand that in perspective. That's why we put it in our strategic plan of one of the 5 things we want to do together. So I know everything you want to do that is equipment-related in emergency management is very expensive. But if you get the right equipment, obviously Fermini and the staff had vetted it, there is funds to do it. It's better to do it now than later when you have an issue, and we could have said, well, we should have done it 3 months ago. That's my opinion personally. That's all I got to say about that. I'd love to hear from the public too, Mayor.
Clerk, go ahead.
Edward Timmons.
Good evening, Council. Ed Timmons, District 3. My response is related to PSPS and not really disaster preparedness. I don't believe a few days without power due to a PSPS event at City Hall justifies a $300,000 generator. Edison gives a 48-hour notice and then a 24-hour notice warning for PSPS-related wind events, sometimes even 4 days for larger organizations, depending on our relationship with the POC. In conversation with Edison, Edison knows about a potential PSPS event 4 to 5 days in advance. This is more than enough time to have a rental company send us a generator to run City Hall. I've called around a few places, like Councilmember Venable did up here, looking online, and I found that we could have a generator around the size that we would need to run City Hall delivered for around $2,000 a week, not including the fuel to run it. At that rate, if we needed the generator for 3 weeks out of every year, that would be about 20% of the $300,000 cost in 10 years. So if we were just running rentals. Lastly, I'm curious if the city contacted their point of contact at Edison. Edison has been known to provide generators for essential services through the use of their own generators or through a bill credit. They'll credit our municipal bill and have us use one of their vendors to rent a generator. As Ms. Woolsey said, perhaps running rentals and kicking the can down the road until we receive a balanced budget might not be a bad way to go. Thank you.
I have no more cards.
Thank you, ma'am. Fermina, I got a question.
I'm sorry, I just received one more card for item number 3. Mr. Brett Granlund.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Just a couple of comments on this item that I think are of concern. Ironically, just today, I was looking at the new emergency electric plan or program up at the water treatment plant as well as the sewer treatment plant. We've spent in the high 28 million or so on a new solar and Tesla battery and natural gas generator system to keep us running anytime there's no power, and to save a lot of money on our operating costs overall. We happen to have a diesel generator up there that we're going to have to salvage. We can't run it in California anymore. You have to have a permit. They squeeze down the number of hours, excuse me, I got to tickle my throat, number of hours in a day you can run it. You got to get your permit and so forth. So I don't know what the disposition of that one is going to be, but it's been replaced now with 2 Generac natural gas generators to avoid the diesel problem, as well as much of the equipment at the district has been replaced with electric. We've gotten rid of, oh, thank you. We've gotten rid of the diesel backhoes, diesel trucks. We're phasing out all of our diesel because it's just too hard to comply with CARB regulations, and they're being obsoleted. So that would be something to think about. I don't know what the district's going to do with the one that's being taken out of service. I think it's 185 kVA. So you might give that some consideration. I have no authority to speak for the district. I'm just saying this was an interesting conversation. The district is getting out of that business. The city's getting into it. My last concern would be that power outages last for 2-3 days. That's what we've had. What happens if the power goes out on Thursday night? You're gonna fire up the generator for a closed city hall for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't know how much good that's gonna do. So I would really think about what the difference between the needs and the wants are. And we may want it, but do we need it? I don't know. But I think there's more to look into to see about an entire emergency electric system that may better serve us. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Any
No more
comments? All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, for me, I got a question for you. Actually, a couple. So if you look at the solar component and bringing that in, you'd have to have batteries, I would presume, in order to store it so that you could use it in case there's an emergency. Typically speaking, how many hours of, how do I ask this question? How many hours of usage would we have if we're trying to power this entire building on a typical setup with batteries? Would we get 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours? Do you have any idea? Have we looked into that in any detail?
We haven't looked at that in that detail, not yet.
Okay. I think that's part of it is that you get about 8 or 10 hours worth and probably then you're out of luck because you're having to wait for more charging time. The other aspect, we sit on the San Andreas Fault right here in Yucaipa, and I think there's something to be said with, even if we have an agreement, if it's a significant event, we could be without power for a little bit, and it may be very difficult to get anything here in town without owning our own already. And then even getting fuel for that, depending on how bad it is, we may have a hard time getting more fuel to fill it, or diesel. I had another question, but it just escaped me. In my limited experience in this area, it seems like entities that have a diesel generator, a lot of times they have only the critical aspects of their facility being run off of the generator versus the whole 100%. Have you looked at that in your study with this to see, would we lean more towards a percentage versus doing 100%? I know it would be our EOC here, but just from some different entities and whatnot that I'm aware of, I don't think they even have 100% operating on emergency generators.
Yes, as I mentioned, the police station facility is, I think only about 50% of it is connected to the backup generator. We only, our research here for City Hall only included identifying what we felt the critical areas are and looking at the electrical plans and seeing what those needs are, and that's how we came up with 160 kVA that would be needed. Again, that would require rewiring certain portions of City Hall, but and that would, I think I mentioned that would, we could power that with, the 160 kVA. Again, the recommendation as before you is for the 330, which would essentially power all of City Hall without having to do any modifications to the wiring with the exception of the transfer switch.
Okay. You have another comment?
There was I went to the National Homeland Security Conference last year in Miami for my other job that sent me. And there was a kind of philosophical in nature, but it got me, it's reminding me of that now. Mr. Timmons was right. In the event that a public safety outage happens, we'll know about it, and we can probably forecast that and make arrangements. But I think this came back. It was prompted by the PSPAs, but I think it came back to us because of the goal we set, which is we want to be prepared. And the phrase that was philosophical nature, but up above one of the vendors, there was the only thing harder than over-preparing is explaining why you didn't. And that is what it resonated with me is how, if we go dark as a government and people die as a result of inaction, we're going to have people lined up here going, what are we paying you taxes for? What are we even having you around for? What have you done to prepare us for this? What have you done to try? And if we do some, if we have stuff, we go, yeah, we tried, we made efforts, but otherwise we're gonna sit up here and say, we thought we could forecast a horrible thing. The PSPAs, you're right, Ed, we can forecast that. And honestly, to that point, fires are kind of slow moving in our north end. I'm worried about a major earthquake, or we see it all the time, and knock on wood, we're not the county sheriff's office that have been attacked by a cyber attack. But they say that our grid is sensitive, and I don't know how true that is. I don't know if our grid can be hacked and held ransom, and then we go, days or weeks without power. I know that I was telling my friends and neighbors that if you can't survive without the government or without electricity for a couple of days, I would hate to see what happens in the event of really a horrible thing, an act of war, an act of terror, some kind of grid attack, because you could be dark for weeks, months, even with what experts say when we go to these Homeland Security conferences. The other part of it is, and I don't want to put too much reliance on, alternate energy, because our electricity grid is not that great in California. We put so much emphasis on, we need to go green and we need to have electronic vehicles, but then we have these, not for public safety, but we have these, brownouts or whatever. We don't have enough power to even provide basic services during the peak hours of the summertime. So I think Mayor Pro Tem Venable brings up a point. Perhaps can we look for something? I mean, there are lease options that are out there. I know this to be true. There are there's one that comes to mind called the Bancorp that specializes in government leasing options, where we can do a drawdown to lease to buy over time versus a $300,000 expenditure at once. There is some interest obviously on that, but I want to see a generator here, and I want to see a port. I was pretty adamant that we need to try to tie into the generator there, but the more I think about it, I think a portable generator is truly the way to go, because while we may need to power City Hall, that may shift really quickly if we need our evacuation center powered in a more critical manner. And I know, as our emergency manager for such a long time, man, sometimes EOCs shift. Sometimes it's not safe anymore to be the EOC here. We need to shift somewhere else. So having power that we can take with us versus stationary standalone power, I think is the optimal way to go. I just don't want to be caught, certainly in any time, but while I'm sitting up here trying to explain why we didn't do something and waited for horrible things to happen, and if God forbid something happens tomorrow, we're going to say, dang, we should have approved this a couple weeks ago. We might have had the generator here by now. And that's all what if. That is a gamble. But it's something that like I said, we're not the city of Yucaipa savings and loan. We shouldn't be, the citizens, we pay taxes so that our government can be efficient and do the job of our government when we need to. Not so we can have some giant inquiry later on as to how come a government failed so horribly that people died. I mean, I don't want to be Karen Bass explaining why the fire hydrants didn't have water. I don't want to be Mayor Thorpe explaining why we didn't have power to help operate our emergency center to get information out quickly to our residents to get them to evacuate. So I don't know. This is a tough one because I think it's needed, but who likes spending money? But at the same time, we have an obligation to be prepared as possible, especially when industry standards are generators are the thing. Every municipality that I've ever worked in or interfaced with has a generator to help power during horrible things. So,
Councilman Miller, you said just something else?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry to speak up so much on this, but I'm passionate about it, quite frankly, because there was a couple of points made that it's not just about that the power goes out for a couple of days. It's about what happens when you have the major focusing event, and history tells you that that will happen. That's why you prepare ahead. As famous Gordon Graham would say, if it's predictable, it's preventable. And that's our job in government, is to prepare. Now, normally during tight budget times, some of the first things that get cut are usually in the emergency management area. Equipment, training, dollars are cut out of that, so you focus on things that you can, maybe look at a little more boldly to fund first. But what happens is when you have something happen later, you're going to regret that you didn't handle it first. And the only reason I say about, yes, Monday through Thursday is what some of the shifts are right now, but an event can happen on a Saturday or Sunday morning where everybody's called in, 12 on, 12 off. The EOC is here, the Emergency Operations Center. We're not going to build a new one. We have the capability here, and the operations ran out of here. Yes, we'll have a DOC at little other places, no doubt about that, but the emergency operations is going to be here, and we control what happens. Yes, it's nice to have rental agreements with other vendors if we need extra equipment. If it's a huge event, we'll get a disaster deck, and we'll get some reimbursement. There's no doubt about all of that. But to have the number one thing you got to have is power to operate your emergency operations center. And it's just good risk management to do it now while we can afford it. Now, I'm sure I'll hear from some of my beautiful folks in my area about, what do you mean you can afford it? Yes, we can. This is a good investment. I trust that our staff has looked into this. They're giving us a good recommendation. They just need us to make a decision. And if you just look ahead of, if you get ahead of this, when we do have the major event, we've done a couple of things to get ahead of it already to mitigate the risk ahead of time and reduce any life of property, any of loss of life, that we're able to handle it more efficiently because we have power, we have professionals, we have training, we've invested in emergency management for our town, we've made it a goal that we're going to keep our town safe, which is the number one goal of government, quite frankly. That's our job, is to keep our town safe. I don't mean to get on a high horse about this, but it's very important. That's why I'm speaking 3 times about it, Mayor. I'm not, I feel strongly about this. If we don't do something now and we push it down the road, we're just going to be doing the same thing again, unfortunately. And I just want to make that case. I trust our staff has made a good recommendation. We know what our job is here. If something happens, we're going to activate this place. We don't have to build a new one. It was designed that way originally. We will train, we will practice so we can do what we need to do. And I want to move this forward for approval.
At the risk of continuing this all night, can we, I'd like, if you made it a motion, but I'd like to maybe modify, I'd like to make a motion that we, and sorry, this may not be exactly what you guys wanted, but can we make a not to exceed amount approval? And really, I would love for you guys to come back and say, we didn't use all of it.
Council, just a point of clarification. So this is a budget item. We're looking for a directive. Do we want to move forward with doing this? You're going to see the item again when we go through the procurement process. So because of the dollar amount of this, we're going to go through a formal procurement process, get multiple bids, come back to you for the actual procurement of the item. So these estimates are just thumbnail to say, do we want to move forward with this? You're going to see the item again when we select the preferred vendor and get multiple bids, and it'll come back to you for final approval.
But you need direction, right, Phil?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so does that satisfy your
Yeah, I
concern
mean, I
for
think
now?
that's ultimately what you just said is,
Okay.
we're going to give you a authorization to spend up to this amount, but we on the procurement process, we'd like you to come back to us with say, hey, we didn't use anywhere close to that. We were able to.
Yeah, this would be direction, which would be appropriating the funds. And then when we go through the process, our formal procurement process, select or get bids and say, this is the one that we are selecting, City Council will see that item again to say, we are recommending going with this vendor and this piece of equipment.
Fermin had mentioned that he had to put out an RFP for it based on some information we received tonight. He could run the RFP in tandem, one for new and one for a used. And we can bring back the option for council consideration. It's completely up to you, but he had mentioned in his presentation he had to do an RFP.
Do they have like certified pre-owned generators? Something like, this is not a clunker, it's gonna do its job, we've inspected it.
Yeah, they do.
Do they have warranties on used that we can, okay.
If you get it from a vendor,
So
Caterpillar.
I'll move approval on the item, and I would like to see 2 different RFPs, one for used, one for new. And that'll be my motion if there's any support for that.
I'll second that.
It's direction, but yeah, he's asking that when they bring it back, they bring 2 options, one for used, one for new, to show the differences. So we have a first and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 4. The staffing adjustment is presented by Mr. Phil White.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 4 is our a set of staffing adjustments. This item is also being brought back to you. A component is being brought back to you. So there are two staffing changes that are being requested. One in the Development Services Department, one in the Finance Department. Both of these deal with vacant positions. Before we fill those positions, we want to make sure that they are consistent with our recently completed class and comp study. We've evaluated the vacant positions to make sure that the duties assigned to those positions are correct. There were updates necessary to both of them. And so the detail in the Development Services Department is we have a vacant position, the Senior Development Services Technician position. The duties assigned to that position are significantly changing. We are requesting the elimination of that position and bringing back or replacing it with the Public Works Engineering Specialist position. From a dollar standpoint, it goes from a range 25 for the existing position, and the new position has a range of 14, so a significant downward adjustment, which represents a dollar savings. That position is in the general fund. In the Finance Department, we have a vacant admin tech position due to a retirement. Similarly, while the changes aren't as significant as in the Development Services Department, there are changes to the roles of that position. And based on our recently completed class and comp study, we are requesting a downward adjustment in the range from a range 26 to a range 22. Altogether, it's also in the general fund, but altogether that represents a budgeted savings of $47,000 to the general fund. The way that we budget vacant positions is mid-step. So if the position is filled, we'll budget based on actual step that the employee has. For vacant positions, we just use center, mid-step. So the sum of those changes equals a $47,000 net change in the general fund. Excuse me. And recommendation number 3 is adopting the resolution, and that resolution reflects the changes and updates a previously adopted resolution. And staff is available for questions.
Any member of council have a question for staff? Madam Clerk, do we have any comments?
No comments on this item.
Okay. Do I have a motion from anybody?
So moved.
I have a first, a second, Councilman Miller, second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Takes us to item number 5. Mr. Joe Preciado, or Predetto, sorry.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Joe Predetto, Director of Governmental Affairs. And I'm back to give you a little more update and talk library. You may recall at our last meeting, staff brought to you some more information based on some initial estimates from design build partners. We shared that some of the initial cost estimates the city had ballooned from about an $18 million project to closer to 25. What that means is the city's initial planned $3 million investment would climb to about 10, roughly. So based on that information and the available cash reserves, we made a recommendation to not proceed. After deliberation and public comment, you asked staff to go back, make a request of the state for an extension, and look at alternatives to fund the library. So today we'll go ahead and outline some of those options that we've identified. I will say that we did make a formal request of the state for an extension and also to reclassify the grant for renovation and for permission to potentially relocate the project. We asked for a determination by March 7th. They have no obligation to meet our own requests, but as of today, we have not heard back from the state. Our grants coordinator was off today, so I will follow up tomorrow to kind of get an estimate. But that is where we are. So I will move forward and note that we are aware of the public desire for this project, and it seems to break down into 2 categories. Yes, 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 and yes. And the other one is yes, if we can afford it. So you're hearing both of those. And what we want to do is provide you all the options to determine if and how we can afford it. Your direction will help us move forward on the different strategies available. There are three main ways to fund a project like this: cash, borrowing, or some mix between the two. Initially, the city was planning to pay full cash for the project and had every anticipation to do that. Now, with the increased amount for the project, it shifts to the point where our cash reserves could probably cover it, but you have to make that risk determination. So then some of the options fall into these other categories of taking on debt in some way, whether completely or impartial. In the staff report, we outline several options. And for you and the public that had an opportunity to read them, again, they kind of break down into some portion of borrowing, cash, going out to the voters and asking for approval. So briefly, just so we can organize our thoughts, the state has a low-interest loan program for infrastructure. We could apply for a loan to fund a portion of the project. We could go and ask the voters for approval to do a tax increase, either probably a parcel increase and a general obligation bond. We can do a lease to own. We did investigate the lease to own early on. Initially, the partners that do that work, Riverside County, delivered 3 library projects using a lease to own model. At the time, this funding gap was much smaller, and they indicated that anything less than $5 million probably wouldn't, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and they weren't too interested. Now that the borrow amount could potentially rise, that may change the calculation. There were suggestions about internal borrowing. The city has done that in the past, and that's something that you can consider. It may fall in the line of creative financing, which I decided I'm going to really scare our finance director for Halloween this year, and I'm going to dress as a creative financing tool. Again, you can use cash reserves. At the moment, it's what the staff would argue is risky, but you could do that. There is, at the moment, money to do that. We can go out for more grants. Again, there's time limitations to that. Our federal lobbyist represents Esri and has made the offer to approach Mr. Dangerman about potentially helping out. But she did caution. She made the offer, but then followed it up with, but he and many like him get 5, 6, 7 requests like this every day. So she says, it's something that I will approach him with. I think it's important for the city, and I want to make it a personal request. So that's in the works. And then the other alternative is to pump the brakes now, include the project in a long-term strategic plan, which you've already directed staff to do, and then look at how to do a project in the future. Again, staff isn't necessarily recommending any one of these at the moment. We did already make a recommendation. These are just presented for your consideration, along with what we've determined as the relative risk and viability of each. We also wanted to provide this information in the context of projects that you have already approved and the city has already spent money on. So these are projects in our capital improvement plan, and you can see that at present, there's still a need for about $52 million for the existing projects that you have approved. That doesn't count about $2.6 million in deferred maintenance. So when we consider funding the library, one of the things we're seeking your direction on is how to prioritize this list and fit the library into it. So just to recap, the city staff made a recommendation to not proceed, but you've asked us to go back and find some options. We've done that. So tonight we're seeking your direction on 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, that the state does not approve our request or denies our request for an extension. And scenario 2, that the state approves our request. Since we don't have direction from the state at the moment, I think it's prudent to have your preference on how to move forward under those 2 different scenarios. So that's kind of where we are. Staff is available to answer questions for you, but at the moment, we're looking for your direction on this project.
Thank you, Joe. In the time that you've worked with different governmental entities, have you had times where you've requested extensions from the state before? Have they ever given an estimate on an extension or worked with that? Because the reason I say that, I'll preface this real quick, is that I had a meeting with some representatives from the county, and it seems like this is kind of their standard operating procedure. They don't normally give extensions. They don't normally respond to it, and you would think that, you know, different governmental entities probably have a person that they can go to. Well, they do have someone they can talk to, but while they may not be decision-making individuals, people that have that authority to authorize extensions, and it does not seem that, even though we wish to have some feedback from them on an extension, I'm not certain that we are ever going to get that.
I think that's accurate. Also, I would say that a realistic extension, we have received feedback from our grants coordinators at various times that they may entertain an extension. I think in their minds, when they think of an extension, they're thinking 6-12 months. A realistic timeline based on the feedback we got from our design build partners of about a 24-27 month construction schedule. Also, if we do make significant changes to the project, we will have to renegotiate our joint use agreement. And then depending on the direction you give in terms of financing, potentially, that could add another 12 to 18 months to solidify that. The request we made was for 4 years to accommodate all that. And the initial feedback from the grants coordinator was that's going to have to go up the flagpole. I do think that we can get a determination, but it would require significant pushing. And I don't know if that would necessarily lead to an approval per se, but it might get them to at least fall on one side and give us certainty. But I have heard that same sentiment about the state's proclivity to not give a determination. In this case, I think we could probably push for one. I'm not saying that it increases our odds for approval. Just for an outcome, I think we probably could push for one.
Thank you. Any of my colleagues have questions or comments for staff?
In your letter to them or your conversation with them, you said for renovation too?
Yep.
So that's to renovate our existing one, right?
It would give us the flexibility to look at our existing buildings or an existing building and move that $9 million from new construction to renovation.
I think that's a good idea.
Councilman Beaver?
We spent a long time talking about $300,000, so this might take some time to talk about $10 million. Yeah. Joe, can you go back to the slide for our current capital approved project? There you go. These are all pretty important to our city. So is the library. The difference is some of these don't exist yet. And are needed. That $10 million Pendleton Road low water crossing is important. I'm trying to make decisions like I would if I was making decisions in my home, like I think most of you folks do. And I really want a new truck and a Harley, but I don't have the money to do that right now. So I'm making do with my 20-year-old truck and a really cool Honda that my grandpa gave me that's like 30 years old. But I look really cool on it. Because I got to make do with what I have at the moment. I understand that we've outgrown our library, but we have a library. You're right, Joe. I think a lot of the sentiment is, yeah, if we can afford a library, we should build one. I don't think we can afford a $10 million investment from a city standpoint right now. Look at, we don't even, like you said, it's been said several times in some of our discussions, we don't even have a balanced budget at the moment, and yet we're entertaining spending $9.8 million right now because a decision has to be made right now. And this is kind of what I was going to, and I was misquoted on the internet about Justin doesn't care about the state and doesn't care about optics, and that's not what I meant. What I meant is we as a community need to come together and decide what we're going to do without the added pressure of the state pushing us to a deadline. That's what I was saying is this is our decision as a community, not the state's, and I don't like being pushed into a decision because the state says we have a finite deadline. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we just say, you know what? It's not the shiniest, it's not the best, it's not the prettiest library, but damn it, it's ours. It's our library, and it's worked so long, and maybe we can make it work a little bit longer while we figure out what a long-term plan is. I would love that brand new 2025 F-250. It costs $100,000, but I can't afford it. And I don't think Yucaipa can afford that brand new $10 million match grant for a brand new library either. We just went rounds for almost 40 minutes discussing whether or not we should spend $300,000. And that was a very heavy point where we had public speakers talking about why we shouldn't, because we don't have a balanced budget and we're talking about spending money, and here we are, the same thing. And I'm kind of flipping script because a couple meetings ago, I was all about it, and I still am. I still think we need a library. And I think we should, the point I was making is I'm not ready to quit. Let's keep on working. And if that means that we work right to that deadline before the state says, all right, you didn't make it. Well, dang, we tried. We worked every minute of the day until we got to the deadline. We didn't make it. I didn't want to throw up our hands and say, nah, we're going to stop trying. I didn't see any harm in saying, hey, staff, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing the work. When's our deadline? Truly, when is the last day that we can make this happen? Until that day comes, don't come to us with a we lost, because we haven't lost yet. We're quitting, and there's a fundamental difference. That was the point I was trying to make before, and I still hold true to that. If in the next couple weeks, in the next whatever months until we have our deadline met, who knows? Maybe Jack and Laura Dangerman do come forward and say, you know what? Redlands is Yucaipa's neighbor. They live right here on the border of Yucaipa and Mentone. Maybe they want to see a nice public library. You know, they got grandkids. Maybe they want to come to the brand new Yucaipa Public Library, have a nice, cool plaque that says sponsored by Laura and Jack Dangerman and Esri. But I feel like if we throw up our hands and quit on that process before that happens, then we're just quitters. That was the point I was making. Not, let's be reckless and we can spend without them. I was just saying, hey, until they take it from us, that $9 million match grant, that's ours. We're not giving it back. They'll have to pry it from us first. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to exhaust every resource. And then when they say, all right, we're taking it back because you guys didn't meet your deadline, dang, we tried. We did everything. We thought outside the box. We sent staff back on endless missions to Sacramento to try to find more time. We asked partners in the region to help us and couldn't make it work, but we tried. Versus, I just like being a quitter. That was my whole point behind that. And I was misquoted online. I didn't like that because that was not what I meant was, let's be reckless. It was more, I don't like quitting. I'd rather go down fighting. And if I lost fighting, so be it. At least I fought. And that's what I was hoping for our community is now. We're not ready to quit. We're going to keep on trying. And I even got flack, not flack, but there was contention even amongst the council is, what are we doing? We're just kicking the can down the road, making the hard no today and even harder no tomorrow. Yeah, but I don't know I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd be in a much different place in life. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what Jack and Laura Dangerman is going to say. I don't know what the state's going to, oh, hell, nobody knows what the hell the state's going to say. They don't even know what they're going to say half the time. But that was my point, and I still want to stay by that. I still think there's work to be done on this. I don't want to spend money. And so if it looks like one of these options, directed to proceed with the project will direct staff to begin incurring costs. How much are these costs? Do we anticipate these design costs are going to cost us if we move forward with this today?
So, Councilman, that's a good question. I was going to touch on that, and Fermin can verify this. We are effectively out of time because we can't construct the project by the end of March of 26 realistically, which is the grant deadline. So if we did proceed, the city's money is the first money out, and the first money out is for site improvements, which do not qualify for the grant. And it's on property we don't own. So then we accrue risk as we start moving dirt and moving closer to the deadline, hoping that the state says yes, that we'll extend it. before we even get to expending their dollars on a dollar-to-dollar match. And then our grant partners, their agreements are that their money is the last in because they want to make sure this is a good deal. So the city's bearing all the risk up front, and the design costs and site improvement, the site improvements alone are a few $1,000,000 and design costs a few $100,000. So realistically, that's the risk, is the first money out is a few $1,000,000 as we lead up to that grant deadline, hoping for an extension. But in real terms, we can't construct by the deadline of the grant right now.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Miller?
Go ahead. I'll yield it. Councilwoman Woolsey.
Okay. I voiced my opinion on this a month ago, so I'm not going to go through all that again. But the council chose to send it back to the staff, and the staff did their job. They came back. Did you mention, Joe, about the Indian tribe pulling back their $1 million?
It's in the staff report. San Manuel has had a need for their $1 million, and since we wouldn't be able to construct by the grant period, they needed to reprogram it. So they did take their money back, but they did say that if the city finds a way to finance it, call us. You know, we're happy to have the conversation and partner, but at the moment, they needed the liquidity.
Right. Okay, well, I've already went through all of my financial concerns, so my vote's not going to change on this item. And actually, I think it's time that this project be put to rest and that we stop any false hope.
Mayor, if I may, if there's more questions of staff, I'm happy, but before you deliberate, I think there's public comment.
Do you have questions, Councilman Miller?
I'd like your public comment.
Okay. We're good for comment.
We'll start with Michael Stevens, followed by Kenny Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Michael Stevens. I'm a managing partner of SGH Architects. I'm actually, in full disclosure, I am a member of one of the design build entities that submitted a proposal in response to the city's RFQ in November. So I do have a personal and professional interest in this project. I'm a resident of the community since 1974. I'm a 1987 graduate of Yucaipa High School. Other than going away for a few years to do my internship in school in architecture, I relocated back to the community in 1993 and have been a member ever since. And I'm a practicing architect in the community. A lot of my work has been built in the community that I'm very proud of. Ask, regardless of what decision gets made tonight, is that the library project be made a priority as an important asset to the community. As it's been talked about many times and probably be reiterated tonight, it provides free access to information. It's a support for community members. It provides a place for civic engagement. It has an educational element, particularly with this agency partner that you've partnered with for this one. It's a DSA Field Act building, and it can be programmed for specific opportunities that the school district can otherwise provide that could also be available for the community to use. And the ability to make the library an adaptable learning environment for all ages. I think it would be remiss to return a gift of funds that equate to 36% of the project cost to date. Although budget and public works infrastructure are important, the issue of budget is not lost on anybody in this room tonight. But they are important, but emphasis on a social infrastructure needs to have a renewed focus in the city. And this library is a unique opportunity with 36% of the project current anticipated budget made available to the city on what is essentially a free site adjacent to an important community stakeholder located in a neighborhood that has historically been an underserved area. I did a little bit of research on the grant as well. I work with grants. My community college clients rely on grant funding for many projects. And the key component to getting a grant extension is showing substantial progress in the development of the project. We can't sit here and pontificate this and talk about how we get assurance before we move forward. There is some risk in this. I think everybody here knows that. But if this is going to be a legitimate push to get this library, this community asset, there is a risk associated with it. And my experience is that the grant extension process has been successful, but there has to be communication with the grant writers and showing demonstrable progress to a viable project. And finally, last 25 seconds, staff is to be commended for the progressive design build delivery method. It is fantastic. It gives the city the best delivery method possible that requires accountability from everybody and allows flexibility, prioritization, and transparency of the project scope, cost, and schedule, i.e. we avoid the PAC project incident where it started off as a $7 million project initially and ended up as a $18 million project. Thank you.
Kenny Wilson, followed by Lynette Thomas.
Good evening, City Council. I just want to go on the record saying I love the library. I think the library is very important. Growing up, I utilize the library. My children use it. My wife uses it. I don't think we can afford the library at this point. I want to agree with Mr. Beaver that as much as I would like to see it happen, we don't have a budget yet. I just recently read in the Mirror that we're actually looking at postponing staffing decisions based on our budget. The timing of the grant, I don't think we're there. It's going to cost the city $10 million today. We just found out a second ago that San Manuel may not be able to follow their commitment for another $1 million. It's going to keep going up. Mr. Miller, a few minutes ago, you talked about trusting your staff with the emergency generator. I encourage you, council, trust your staff on this as well. They've come back and said, we want to do it, we just simply can't do it. That's where I'm at. As much as I would love to do it, I don't think it's responsible right now.
Lynette Thomas, followed by Mary Reuter.
Mayor Thorpe and council members, you have a very difficult job. Lots and lots of competing projects for your attention, for the money from this district, from the taxpayers, and I don't envy you making this decision, but I plead with you, do not give up on this library. Could I ask the people who are here to represent the library and say yes, 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 to stand for just a second? If you're here in favor of the library, please stand for just a moment. Thank you. You may be seated. It is the will of the people of Yucaipa that we have this library. Your job is tough, but thankfully you have a roadmap, and that is the city's master plan. It was developed with great community input in the 2000s. The people of Yucaipa said, we want a better sheriff's department and facilities. Check, we have it. We need a city hall befitting our city. Check, we have it. We need a performing arts center. We have a beautiful one. Check. We need a library. No check. No check. We are not, and I am the secretary of Friends of the Library, but I'm only speaking for myself as a citizen, that we need this for this generation and generations to come. Please do not let potholes take precedent over something that enriches our community, makes us who we want to be. I am not naive about funding, but this really isn't about funding. It's about will and what's important and what are our priorities. Our children, our adults have the most democratic facility in the public library. We have partners in this project from the very beginning. By the way, I have heard more creative solutions in the past month and a half than I have since we submitted this grant. Please don't send a letter. Go to Sacramento, sit down in front of them. Let them see who we are as this vibrant, beautiful city. Thank you.
Mary Reuter, followed by Colleen Wong.
My name is actually Dr. Mary Reuter. And I live on the North Bench.
I was a public school teacher for 38 years. I taught special education students. I was also a lecturer at UCR for a number of years. I would not have a doctorate if it weren't for my experiences in the library at my hometown back in Louisiana, a very small town at the time. I love books. I love reading. And yet I'm going to take a very unpopular stance. The city cannot afford this library. And for me, that is the bottom line. Every single school has a library. Every single teacher worth his or her salt has a library in their classroom. The children have access to computers where they can do research in all of the schools. So it's not as though the children will lack access to books or research or information. And I understand and I support the Friends of the Library. They are good people who have worked very hard. The bottom line, we already have $52+ million in commitments to our city. And in the future, I'd love to see us be able to put up a library, a bigger, better library that can help more people in this town. At this time, we have a library. The children, and I've heard it time and again, that, but we have to do this for the children. The children have access to what they need. I do not believe that this is for the children. I think, and I've asked Councilman Miller at his meeting, please be fiscally responsible. When he asked, what is it that you want me to do representing District 1? That was my response. Be fiscally responsible. And I don't think it is fiscally responsible now to fund this library. Thank you.
Colleen Wong.
Hi, Colleen Wong. You know, the library in this city is so overcrowded. Over 200 people a day visit that library and use that library. And I'm going to disagree with the last speaker. Not everybody uses the schools. Not everybody has access to computers. Not everybody has phones. And that means they don't have access. They don't have the ability to have books and read. I grew up in a really small place that didn't have access like she describes. And if I hadn't had books, I wouldn't have ever gotten anywhere. I wouldn't have become a nurse, and I wouldn't have ever learned what I know today. And if you don't have a library, you don't have literacy. And if we don't have literacy today in this world, we get nowhere. You can't live in this country if you're not literate. You have to be literate. You have to be literate. You don't have a library, you get nowhere. And Mr. Perdetto, you have $1 million department, and if you can't go to Sacramento and advocate for that grant, then what are you doing? What are you doing? You had all that time to advocate for the wine country, all that money we spent on that, but you can't go and get that grant funded? Come on, guys, use some of that great intellectual ability and that staff has and that this city has, and get that money and raise that over 200 a day. Have you been in that library? Imagine it with all those people in there. 200 a day. What other building in this city gets that much use? Tell me that. 200 a day. I'd like to see this building 200 a day.
I have no more cards. No more.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, I think this is really important to me. I've been pushing for this since we heard that we got the grant for it. But there's a lot of hurdles in our way. And I think it was with Councilman Beaver probably about 4 years ago when we first got on council, we had a conversation. He said, we're really good about starting projects, but we're not really good about maintaining them. And in the staff report, I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers, 2-point-something million just in maintenance stuff. That's a real good description word, sorry, maintenance stuff. 2.6 million that needs to be addressed and taken care of. We've got that list of priorities that are on there, that adds up to another 52 million. We have a lot of priorities, and it's not saying this isn't a priority. It just may not be the right time right now for this. However, when I say that, I referenced a conversation I had with some county representatives recently. And there may be opportunities down the road, even if we don't get the new library right now and with this particular grant funding. There may be opportunities down the road with some other partners and whatnot that we are able to pour some money into our current library to update it and make it something that is an improvement of where it is, that allows us to be able to use that as a stopgap until we get to a better facility down the road. I think there's something to be said about maybe stepping back, and we're not giving up, but maybe we're moving this down the road a little bit to reconvene, get our bearings on finances, and figure out what that long-term plan is for creating that dream library that we want. It's not to say that's not important. I just think that we have a lot of things on our plate right now that we have to address, and I think finances is an important one. It's one of our goals that we have to address, and taking on another project. Again, it doesn't mean that it's not important. I just think we already have obligations. You've all seen them that were on the slide tonight, and I was going to say this later in our agenda. I honestly think that this agenda is the best agenda I've seen in almost 5 years, a little over 4 years. The way it was laid out, the options that were laid out, the research that was done, the information that was put there. It's not done with a slant. It's done with, here's all the facts. If you pick option A, here's the result. You pick option B, here's the result. High, low, and medium risk. I think it was laid out very objectively, the entire agenda. I mean, we've got a couple of big points here that we're looking at tonight, but I think the whole thing was probably the best agenda I've seen, and things can change through the way the government operates, but maybe this serve as a go-by for any future agendas. So kudos to staff that put it together. I thought it was very well done. That's my perspective. Open up to my council members. We'll start with Councilwoman Woolsey. Do you have anything to add? No? Councilman Miller?
Yeah, I want to thank the speakers for coming up, and I thought this might come up tonight, so I did prepare something. I understand and appreciate strong community support. I have heard from some people on this item specifically for a new library. Modern library would be a tremendous asset for our residents, no doubt about that. How can you talk against a library? I share the goal of making it a reality. However, right now, the city faces a $10 million funding gap for the library. That's a reality. To move forward immediately, we would either have to deplete 2/3 of our city reserves, take on debt, or divert funds from other critical projects like flood control and road safety improvements. These are not just wish list items. They are essential to protecting safety and preventing costly damage. I think we're not going to make a decision to cancel the library. It's really a decision to reassess how we can fund it responsibly without jeopardizing the city's financial health. If the state, extends our grant, we can explore outside funding sources, including grants, public-private partnerships to close the gap. That can be a goal in our strategic plan. I support that. If the extension is denied, we'll ensure the library remains a priority somehow in our plan. We will make that a priority. Where that falls in the priority depends on what we work on as a council when we do our strategic plan with our consultant. I do encourage the community to stay engaged in this conversation. I feel it, definitely. If we can find creative ways that don't put our city stability at risk, I want to hear them. We all want the best for Yucaipa. I'm committed to making decisions that serve both our immediate needs and long-term future. I know we had a partnership also with the school district for the property. It's a great location that we were looking at. But if you read the staff report, which I know many of my constituents out there did, there's a $10 million hole there. And then we found out that one of our partners have pulled the money back. So realistically, you're all very smart. Our community's smart. They read everything. They know what's going on. It's just too hard to do it this time. But we can put it on an objective in our goals and objectives in our strategic plan of where that'll fall and continue to look in the future. But our staff needs direction. We've kicked this down a couple of times now. We need to direct them of what the possibilities can be in the future, and I think they need that to go forward. And we got to support our staff with the recommendations. There's a couple items there. I mean, you saw the one slide of what we still have to work on, and that's just reality. Nobody wants to speak against the library. Who wants to do that? I mean, it's beautiful. There's great stories. I have been in the library. I snuck in a couple of times incognito. I put my Dodger baseball hat on and a jacket, and I walked in there and just kind of counted the people in there at different times. I went in like 2 o'clock, and then I went in at 4 o'clock, and there were people using the computers and people reading and kids I think there was some tutoring going on where maybe private tutors are teaching students. So it was definitely being used. I think it could be, brightened up a little bit in there, maybe do some work on it temporarily to make it a little brighter in there. But it was being used, no doubt about it. I didn't count people. I would assume there was 43 people in there when I went in a couple of times, but it was being used. It was a nice place. Kids were happy. People were learning. Folks were using the computers. I mean, what a library should be. Who knows what people will learn and what they'll be in their life. Reading is the key to everything. We talked a lot about that at the school district. If you can read, you can have a great life. It's the key to everything. So I support it. It's just we have a $10 million gap on this project. And many of you know that out there. You're pretty smart people. So I just think we have to consider that the gap is the issue. But it's a great idea to continue forward and listen to our folks on it.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem.
I didn't know you were a Dodger fan. Okay, settle down. The Angels are doing spring training right now, so it's our year. Quote, if you don't have a library, you don't have literacy. We do have a library. It's not the nicest, may not be big enough, but I think we'd be better off investing into our current library with a quarter of the amount of money we'd be investing in a brand new one than we would spending this money right now. And more than that, I think there is an opportunity for us to get creative because investing into that building currently may not be the best long-term plan because we don't know what the incubator center, what the library, what the bluff holds as part of a greater, development 10 years down the road. It's been said that this corner specifically, where the sheriff's station used to be, is like one of the best real estate locations in the city for commercial development, a restaurant or something like that. But that's not to say that, even if a quarter or a fraction of this $10 million that we're talking about possibly investing today, maybe 11 without the tribal money, can't go into a stopgap, a 10-year plan building, like I said, that Citibank potentially. Can we find a way to put that as a temporary home for a library while we, as a council, have a strategic plan and maybe hey, we're gonna invest $1 million a year towards a library fund, so it's not coming out of a general fund. We're planning ahead. It's like what we do in our homes, right? Hey, we need new windows. We can't afford it right now, so we'll put some savings aside. We'll plan for that renovation down the road, because we can't afford it right now. It'd be reckless. My daughter wouldn't be able to eat tonight if I paid all the money for those windows. That $10 million is difficult to approve when we don't have it. We don't have a balanced budget. It's been said several times. So much so that we didn't fund giving our city staff more employees to help them have a more healthy home life or homework balance. I don't know what kind of message that sends to our employees that are working their tails off saying, we're not gonna help you. Keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to see your kids. Keep working overtime. We're gonna spend $10 million on a project. We do have a library. I do have a 20-year-old Dodge Ram. It's not the prettiest, but it does the job. And it may be able to work a little bit longer while we figure out a long-term plan. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing us and maybe invest more in our current library while we figure that out down the road. But I have a hard time with this $10 million gap in our budget at the moment, considering we are still in a fiscal year that has a deficit.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The city bank, is that ours? That's not ours, is it? Is it for sale? So, I mean, is that an option for us? I mean, to look at that and to renovate that? I know that Calamasa took their Bank of America and renovated that one. I mean, it's an option.
It's not a building we own, and I think square footage wise, it's smaller than our existing library.
Oh, it is, even with the downstairs?
I didn't, the basement seemed, in the haunted house, like a very low roof.
I don't know. I'm just, sometimes you just gotta, I'm thinking out loud. So, there's like.
I do know that if you do have that, you do access the basement, you would have to put in an elevator.
Oh. Well, maybe that is an option, that we start putting money aside to, try to facilitate them and put a little bit of money into it until we get a little bit healthier.
Maybe help subsidize the school. I didn't realize that it was suggested that our school libraries aren't as capable of helping the kids out. Maybe there's a partnership we can have with the school district where we help invest in this, because the school libraries aren't going anywhere, where this library building might be something else in 5-10 years, depending on how the surplus property goes and what changes. Schools generally aren't going anywhere, so maybe there's an opportunity for us to try to figure out a way to partner with the school district and help them improve their libraries down the road. I don't want to be the council that turns our back on libraries. That's not what we're talking about here. Like you said, Councilman Miller, we're talking about how can we be fiscally responsible, still support literacy and opportunities to have internet at your fingertips, and really help our community as a whole, without putting ourselves in a spot where, oh man, we just spent all of our money. We don't have a rainy day fund now. We have insurance, and I get that, but at the end of the day, we should have a rainy day fund. We should have some money, some contingencies and reserves in place, so that we're not stretching ourselves so thin that we're now we can't fund those escalating utility costs and stuff. So,
Fermin, you have the magic wand for the slide deck, or could you put it on that slide that showed all the different options on the risks, the high, low, So we're talking about several different things here, and no one probably wants to make this particular motion, so I'll throw it out there. My recommendation at this juncture, and again, it's not saying it's not important, I just think we need a little more time to figure some other things out. So my motion would be the very last one there, which is in line with our city staff's recommendation, is to release the grant back to the state and reassess and try to come up with a long-term plan to be able to have that work towards that dream library that we'd like to have. So that's my motion. I don't know if we have a second on the dais for that or not.
I'll second it with a comment.
Okay, what's your comment?
Yeah, I just definitely want to give staff direction tonight, no matter what. It's all about that $10 million gap. we can't go into our reserves. We can't go that way. Again, you know, it's hard. You got the public here. We don't want to talk against the library. It's a beautiful thing. And I'll speak up for our school district. Yes, they have beautiful libraries in the schools. And they have great teachers that teach kids how to read. But that's a whole different dynamic on the education side. You still need the public side. We still need our, you know, the other side for folks that, you know, maybe that don't go to regular school choice, maybe they use tutors, et cetera. That's a good side too. But I just think it's that too big a gap right now, and we even had a partner that left us on this, so I understand why. But we have to be careful about all that. And it really comes down to the $10 million gap. And we have to be frugal about that, quite frankly.
Thank
Get
you.
a second?
We had a first, he's a second, Councilman Miller's a second, so we'll go to a vote.
Clarification, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify what exactly we're voting on. We are voting on not to proceed at this time. Is that correct?
Correct, it's gonna be the bottom item on that slide deck there, which is in line with the staff's recommendation to not proceed at this time and reassess to look at a long-term plan.
Thank you.
Okay, so I made the motion and Councilman Miller the second.
I'm sorry, sir. Before you call for a vote, what's a realistic, I'm looking at our finance director and our ACM at the moment. What's a realistic timeframe before you think we can have some kind of a plan, not intruding on our current goals, but what it would look like for us to start having enough reserve or have enough money to start setting aside money and funding a long-term plan for a library? Because we're going to ask you that you bring it back to us. That part of it is, she switched it, is to come back, possibly have part of a strategic plan to have a library. I don't want the conversation to die. I want to keep it. Okay, we're going to have we need to talk about the library so we have plans. So I just want to know, and to having our public be aware of, be on the lookout. This is something we anticipate we'll be discussing relative to a plan for a library within the next month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It would be part of the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is a comprehensive strategy for the community. And so as part of that plan, we would prioritize what we wanted to save for. And the library would be part of that discussion to say, where does it fall on the priority list of spending for the city?
So this is something we'll be discussing in the near future, so the public can come back and offer their opinion on that matter relative to what priority we're going to place on that.
Correct, yeah. The strategic plan is a long process, better part of a year. Once we get started on that, there'd be like a call for projects. What does the community need? And then there'd be discussion, and this would certainly be an item that would be part of that.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Okay.
A question again. So we're basically still saying that we are going to proceed at some point to build a new library? No?
We're not planning to build a new library. We're talking about, is that part of a strategic plan from what I gather? Is that something that the community has an appetite for?
So down the road?
Eventually.
Yeah.
Could be part of a 20-year plan, a 50-year plan. I don't know. Depends on what the community says and directs us to what to do.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna proceed real cautiously here. I have a first, which was me. I have a second, Councilman Miller. Can we proceed to a vote?
I think we should.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I will, I'm still going to vote no on a library. That's what I committed to.
Okay. You, staff understand? We're good?
No, so we need a yes or a no on the motion, council member. A yes would be to relinquish the grant and to reassess the library project during the strategic plan. So that would be to vote no, as you said, on the current allocation of funds for the library. So I think you're looking for a yes vote at this time. Does that make sense?
Yes, you actually do. Okay, yes.
Thank goodness.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, now we're good. All right. So now we'll move into council member reports. So I'll kick this off and then we'll go to Councilwoman Woolsey to follow up. But earlier this evening, somebody made a comment about wanting to know about town hall meetings in their district. This is something that I had spoken with our city manager at the time about eventually throughout this year, each district having a town hall in their in their district at their time when they're ready and able to, with schedules and availability for structure, a place to have it, whether it's a school or wherever, but probably somewhere within that district. Councilman Miller did that when he first got on with his district. I would have an interest in us all trying to do that at some point in time as council members in each of our district, just to connect with our folks, talk to them, and have some questions and dialogue. So with that in mind, did you want to address that comment at all?
Yes, I will. Mrs. Fink, is that correct? Was that your? Okay, thank you very much for coming forward. At this time, I do not have any type of meeting scheduled. However, if there is something that you would really like to discuss with me, I would be more than happy to meet with you. We could set up a time and we can sit down and discuss whatever you would like to do.
I know several people have asked me questions, so I'll get with you.
Thank you.
All right, any other reports from you? Any other reports of any kind?
At the last transit meeting, there was a couple of things that I thought this community might be interested in. First of all, call boxes. Remember the boxes on the freeway? Okay, they're going to be discontinued, and they will be replaced with newer equipment, probably within certain amount of time. They didn't really give a time period. And the I-10 eastbound truck climbing lanes should be open in July. They said, hopefully. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Miller?
Yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity last Friday to go to the wonderful Valley Elementary with Principal Chris Rexstadt, Leadership Day. They had a great Leadership Day. Principal Rexstadt and his staff are just doing a wonderful job with them students. They're little leaders. You go on campus and they're kind of leading it. And I'm just real proud of Chris and his staff. And it was really good to go there and meet some of our community members. And they just did a wonderful job. I know you've attended it before, Justin, and it was just a warm day, warm feeling around there, and I'm really proud of our elementary schools, especially Chris Rexstadt's leadership there. And also got to attend Senator Ochoa's Bogue's swearing in. It was beautiful there at the Palm Desert campus, Cal State San Bernardino. Beautiful speech. It was well attended, packed, I think. Councilman Venable was there also, and it was just a beautiful day, and real proud of our senator. It was a beautiful speech. And enjoyed it, representing our town.
Very good. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, we got a run coming up, don't we? Of course we do.
On behalf of Megan Wolf, yes, the Healthy Yucaipa Committee does have a run scheduled for Saturday, April 6th, and it'll be in collaboration with Crafton Hills College. So Run for the Hills.
And then we have, what's the event on May 10th or something like that, or?
We have Music and Arts Festival,
That's
May
the one.
3rd and 4th.
Yep.
In the Uptown.
Yep. And we're still looking for somebody for Park and Recreation, a young no.
Correct, a student member
Yeah,
for
high school
the
appointee.
Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we're still looking for that.
Can somebody who's on the youth advisory be a commissioner?
Yes.
Maybe one of our youth advisory committees.
We have tried. They're stretched a little thin right now.
We have
but
tried.
we have
Would it take us moving the days around to help?
No, actually, they don't conflict. Youth Advisory is the first and third Wednesday. Parks and Rec is
just
the
too busy.
fourth Wednesday.
They're just too busy.
They're extremely busy.
Yeah.
They're out there getting 4.9 GPAs. They can't fit another
Correct.
meeting into their schedule?
Yep.
I'm kidding.
April 26th? What did I say? The 6th. Sorry. April 26th is the Run for the Hills.
Okay.
My apologies.
All right. That's okay. Thank you.
Councilman Beaver, anything?
No, no necessarily city business, but it's not every day that a father gets to use this platform to wish his daughter a happy 10th birthday. You've probably seen my daughter out and about at different events, and it's hard to believe that she's going to be a whole decade old. And so if she's watching, sometimes she does. Happy birthday, sweetie. I love you so much. That's it.
Thank you. Acting City Manager, do you have any announcements?
No, sir.
Okay. So with that, This meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be Monday, March 24th, 2025. And the current time is 2 minutes after 8, and council will move into closed session.